right, and I think we'll get started. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our session on transforming your buy-side agreements. In this session, you're going to learn how to successfully implement and transition your supplier agreements in two different environments within your organization. Our guest speaker today is Linda Schwan. She's the Vice President and Global Head of Technology Sourcing for Thomson Reuters. Prior to joining Thomson, Linda held executive sourcing and procurement positions in companies like Yahoo, Siebel, and most recently Salesforce. So without further ado, please welcome Linda Schwan.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Charlene.
You're welcome.
I had initially asked for a walk-on music because they had that last year for me, but I don't know what happened. I think the translation didn't get sent to the tech people. But thank you. I see some familiar faces. I have a following here who kind of follows me and attending my sessions year after year. This is actually my third year at Apttus, and so I was asked to join the conference this year to talk to you guys a little bit about how I've been able to use contracts for the buy side. And people think about contracts may not be for the buy side, that it's only for the sales side, but I will change your mind. A little bit about Thomson Reuters in terms of sort of a word from our sponsor here. For those of you who knows what Thomson Reuters does, okay, good. Over 160 something years old. One of my case studies will be about this company. And they offer up services for legal, accounting, tax, risk professionals. And we have all presence, hundreds of offices around the world, and so on and so forth. So you can find out more about Thomson Reuters on the website. And so let me start off this contracts for the buy side question for you. For those of you who are on the buy side, it's the fourth industrial revolution. You guys know what the fourth industrial revolution is, right? With AI, big data. Where are your contracts? On the sales side, you know where your contracts are. Everybody puts a lot of effort on the sales and revenue side. But what about your supplier side? What about your buy side? The technology and the management that you have on your sales side, why isn't it that you would turn it also over in terms of enough attention on the buy side as well? Wouldn't you want to know just as much as what you're committing to your suppliers, what your liabilities are on the buy side, as much as where you want to know where your sales are coming in from and your revenue side? It makes sense, right? So how many of you, I know I'm kind of asking you to raise your hand, but how many of you already started on a digitization journey with your buy-side contracts or anything with the buy-side? Yeah? Good. Well, last year there weren't as many people raising their hand. So, good. So when you start your digitization, you have to start thinking about certain things. Do you know where your contracts are? How many of you are GDPR ready? Yeah, sort of. Requirements May 26, you have to be GDPR ready, especially in all of your contracts. And where are your contracts from? It's your suppliers, right? Your customers are going to ask more and more that your suppliers are GDPR ready, that they're going to be also PII compliant, right? So there's more and more regulation now that is tying your customer requirements to your buy-side requirements. How many of you guys know that your supplier contracts are in compliance with your buy-side contracts? Do you know? Not really. So my prediction, and I'm offering this up to you all, is as we get more and more into data privacy, into GDPR, into big data and AI, we're going to have more and more requirements around what our supply base and our supply chain is going to do for our customers. And our customers are going to get smarter and smarter about what they're going to want on the supplier side. So this, in terms of contracts for the buy side, is going to become more and more important. Yeah, you hear about people talk about managing your spend, but what is spend? Spend is tied to your contract commitments, right? In addition, I'm laughing because it was just about last week, I was still asked to sign a contract, an amendment, after it's been printed out and it was walked over to me to my office. Somebody asked me to wet ink it. I'm like, what? What is that? Can you send it to me digitally so I don't have to worry about scanning it, putting it back, upload it back into the database and so forth. And so how many of you who have millennials in your households? Generation Zs? I call them the on-demand generation. My daughter's 12 years old. What do they call them after millennials? The on-demand, they want it right now. It's the right now generation, right? You ask them to come and work for a company where you're doing things manually. Good luck. Do you know over 100 million workers in the United States, only about a third of them are engaged? Meaning they come to work, they're offered up technology, new technology, rich technology, automation, scale that they like to use, versus how many still manage Excel spreadsheets? That is, I will predict the death of spreadsheets. Because why? We're going to dashboards. We're going to where it's just served up to you so that you can take insights out of it right away without having to remember how to do pivot tables. I mean, come on, I did that like 15, 20 years ago going through college. Oops, I gave my age away. Okay, anyway. But think about how we're going, in the world of big data, in the world of AI, everything is about dashboard, dynamic real-time information. Who wants to manage by Excel spreadsheets? The other day I was asking for some of my reports and I was told, oh, but I sent that email to you last week. Okay, so now I have to go into my email box and look for, I call it hunting and pecking. I'm hunting and pecking the right email with the right Excel spreadsheet in it. That infuriates me. What happened to my dashboard, right? So I'm finding that the more I work with the younger generation, I'm not that much older, but they want immediate response. They want immediate insights. They don't want to have to go figure it out. They want to be able to have dashboards right there served up to them. And so for companies who are not quite there yet in terms of not automating and not scaling, you're going to have a tough time recruiting. What are we? We're in the era of what's the war on talent. There's not enough. There's not enough technologists. There's not enough engineers and software developers, thought people, ideas people. As we get more younger generations into our workforce, I think it was a statistic, if I remember correctly, by 2020, over half of our workforce will be millennials. They don't want to work with spreadsheets, okay? So what are we doing about making our workplace, automating and digitizing our processes so that we are attracting the right level of talent and the right level of next generations coming in the door? So tying that in terms of technology with talent. Now, I asked earlier about digitization. There's been, people use digitization, digitalization, digitizing, transformation, all of that all together. But I just wanted to clarify, in order to digitalize, you have to start digitizing. So, okay, makes sense? So you can't digitalize without digitizing first. And one of the first things you can do is to do it with the contracts. Most of us have something, right? Most of our companies, we have some kind of repository, some kind of a database with all of our contracts. But is it centralized? Is it at the corporate enterprise level where everybody can see all the information at one point? All the people who needs to see it, not everybody, but like sourcing, procurement, legal, right? It may be audit, right? Do you have the ability to be able to digitize your documents, whether it's PDF, whether formats, to be able to have the ability to report on the contracts that you have, whether it's, you got contracts coming up for expiration 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out. I call that a contracts aging report. Accounting and finance, we talk about accounts receivable report, right? What you're receiving, that's important to sales. And then your accounts payable report, what you're paying out to your suppliers. Do you know what contracts are coming up for expiration? 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, a year out. Oracle contracts, Microsoft contracts, IBM contracts. You're not going to manage that within 30 days, right? Don't you want to have an advance notice so that you can work with your business partners and stakeholders more strategically so that you can strategically approach that negotiation, find out what your business needs are, and so on. But not a lot of companies have that kind of visibility. Digitization first, then you can digitize, then digitalize. So digitalization is the combination of both the digital piece and the physical portion of the asset. Then you can begin that digitization transformation journey. How many of you have a digitalization plan at your company, a formalized plan? Very nice. How many have you started on it, executing on it? How far are you down that? Quite far? Good, you're ahead. I've held webinars where over 400 companies attend. Less than half even start talking about digitization. Of that half, less than a quarter of the people who attend have even started on the process. So congratulations, you're way ahead of everybody. Good for you. Now, I wanted to talk about the importance of centralizing and having this contract management, some visibility into your contracts database, whether you're in an organization that you just walked in and you have the blessing and the influence to start it from scratch, okay? So I have a case study where I actually joined a company. They had really nothing. I made a mandate to centralize a contracts database. Whether it's centralized with sourcing being the signatories or other people, stakeholders being signatories, it doesn't matter, just as long as you start that database with a centralization. Because only then can you start filling out data fields that would help you with the reporting that you need on the back end. We went from, in terms of the whole automation and the digitization of the database, we went from about 400 or so, 400 to 500 or so contracts a year to over 1,500. So that the uploading, I guess what you would call indexing of the contract, who is it with, when does it expire, and so on, was done automatically. Sourcing people didn't really have to touch it at all. I call it no-touch contracts management. But yet, we were still able to get the contract reporting and insights on the back end. We can report on which contracts are coming for expirations. We can also report on which contracts have special terms that are not standard to our company. I'm currently working on a way to have our standardized templates with our verbiage, right? And then being able to compare the contracts that we have executed against our standard verbiage so that I would know what quality, what percentage quality of our supplier contracts adheres to our contract company standard. Do you guys know what part of your contracts, your supply base, is 80% to your standard, 90% to your standard, right? You have no idea. Not until I started doing this, I had no idea as well. So if you're in a high growth company, starting from scratch, just centralize where you can, and then just go forward, get alignment. If our business partners, or if your business partners are the ones to sign contracts and commitments on your behalf, you can get them to agree to just send it to you. Fine, we don't have central execution by sourcing or procurement. Have them just send it to you, promise them you'll upload it, and anytime they need question or translation on a term or condition, give it to them. But at least they'll give you the final executed contract, right? So get that started. And then you'll find that it scales. It grows with the company. I was at a company, you guys can guess, growth 30, 35% year over year. Contracts volume was growing over 50% year over year. My team didn't grow 50% year over year. They barely grew 3, maybe 3%. But we were able to support this kind of scale, okay? Then, crossing over to the other side, two extremes, right? You may even walk into an organization that has something with over business units, 20 or 30 different business units, 40 to 50 different P&L. I kept saying purchase ledgers. No, it's profit and loss. P&Ls, and they all manage to their own budget. They all have their own sort of database. So I was able to walk in and say, hey, please gain alignment, again, centralization, to at least get all the contracts uploaded into one space, one area, one database. From that, there were so many contracts missing, and you don't realize how much you need the contracts until you go through what? Acquisitions are actually easy because you're bringing it in, right? You bring it, and as they come in, as they become, as I call them, tuck under, as you tuck in a new acquisition into your processes and your systems, you can just add on. But the day that your company starts talking about a divestiture, right, or a sell-off, then what happens? Oh my gosh, what's our contract commitments? What's our contract liability? How much asset do we own versus what we're selling off? Where's all that documented? In your contracts. And if you don't have it somewhere, you're not going to be able to split or divest, because part of that divestiture is you have to know where your assets are allocated, where your financials are allocated, right? People are going to want to know, how much am I buying? What assets am I buying? In addition to that, what commitments have I just committed myself to, right? And so getting your contracts centralized is key. Understanding current issues, everything else basically just kind of falls in place once you get that critical alignment of centralizing it. Whole demo sessions. Oh, I delivered recently, since I joined this new company about September. Within about 4 months, I was able to centralize the whole contracts database for them, and I told them I would do it in about 3 to 4 months. I held a demo with my head of technology and operations. Sourcing reported into the tech ops, technology operations side. And I said to my SVP and EVP, both, I had so many bosses. And I said, I have promised you scale, automation, and I promised you I'd deliver it in 3 to 4 months, and I promised you transparency and reporting. Showed them what I did with the demo in terms of the solution. Part of it was Apttus, part of it was another solution. And I delivered on what I said I would do. And so guess what? Now for my next project, my EVP was like, Linda, I want your next project. When are you going to do that for me? I was like, well, just give me the budget. I didn't really have to ask for it now. So credibility that comes with doing something like this, and the value. How do you value that? That's probably the hardest thing. How do you put value around visibility into risk, around transparency into unforeseen, commitments and penalties and things like that, especially when you're a big, huge company who's been around 100-something years, and all of a sudden you're looking to right size, selling off your business units. It's more and more important. Let's not forget all the GDPR and the PII requirements as well. So, having done this several times at different companies, brand new companies starting from scratch, or companies who've been around 160-something years with 20-something business units, here's what I found in terms of some of the tips and tricks and takeaways. I talked about centralization, digitizing, use a solution that'll allow you to scale. Something like, and I'm not just here because I use Apttus too, I'm a customer, but a solution that is open, that is easy with an API that can integrate to your back office is an absolute must. Capturing critical fields, it sounds a little bit tactical. It is, but if you think about the ability to be able to report on these fields on the back end, this becomes strategic, right? If you're not capturing the right data fields per your contracts, you're not going to be able to do the reporting on the back end. To be able to report on contracts that are coming up for expiration 30, 60, 90 days out, you have to have beginning, right? The beginning term and the end term. To figure out what penalties you might have, you have to be able to capture if this penalty clause is not standard to your company's penalty clause. Things like that. So really think through all of those data fields that you may want to be able to report on. Building that into the beginning of during the implementation is going to be critical to your ability to be able to report on it later. Leveraging software solutions. Until recently, I was not a big proponent of sort of a platform or a portfolio of solutions. Up until about 5 years ago, I think, there were all of these new capabilities and new providers that's coming out to the market, and I strongly believed in picking the best solution for its purpose, fit for purpose, or performance for purpose. However, in the last 5 years or so, I'm seeing more and more companies as they come out to the market for that particular purpose, they're also growing their portfolio, right? So apparently, they're now trying to diversify their offerings. And so some companies have done a really good job in terms of growing across the process of whether it's procure to pay or source to contract or CLM, CPQ, and so forth. But some companies have not done as good of a job. And so for your own technology needs in your company, you need to evaluate that. But I was initially first best of breed, pick the solution that does what it's supposed to do for that niche area first, and then figure out how you can leverage an open API to connect them all. Unless the provider has pretty good, they meet 80 to 90% of your requirements throughout their portfolio of offerings, then maybe go with that one provider, with that one platform. To be honest with you, if your providers are telling you you have to select that one provider because it's across the platform and they can integrate and stuff, don't buy it. Don't buy into what they're selling you, meaning the solutions are so open these days, platforms like open APIs everywhere. All of these solutions can and will talk to each other. So I've sort of done several projects on my own in companies where I was at, where I've connected best of breeds together, and it works so well, okay? So evaluate the solutions for your own needs and your own company needs, of course, but the open APIs where each solution can be interoperable, it's a long syllable, interoperable is getting better and better. And so potentially maybe we'll get to sort of a platform solution where end-to-end processes can be digitized in one company's offerings. And then of course, we have Apttus here with their solutions and their offerings. I started out with Apttus's contract lifecycle management tool at my previous job, my previous role, and in my current role, I'm trying to implement it also for the buy side. We do currently have it for the sales side, but I think people are thinking about this the wrong way. Contracting is contracting. The process is the process. How you contract for your salespeople and your revenue side is the same process as you contract for your buy side and your supplier side. If anything, if you kind of take the two processes together and you kind of flip it on each side or whatever, you can map the sales side to how procurement and sourcing does the buy side. So why is it, I don't get it. I don't understand why people get so hung up on, this is CLM for the buy side and we can only use it for the buy side. No, get out of that trap. Think of it as a business process. It's a solution for a business process that you can use for any type of contracting. Why limit yourself? I don't get this four square fitting it in the box, right? So I would challenge you all to think about it more as it's a business process and what solution can we use to solve and digitize that process. When I was at Salesforce, I took the CLM tool. Yes, for CLMs, for customers. And I used it for the supply side. No customization, some configuration. So think about it that way, right? Then I think you can get so much more out of, and more ROI out of your suppliers and out of your technology implementations. With that, I've got a few minutes left. I was told I couldn't take any questions during the presentation, but I have a few minutes now, I guess, to take anybody with questions. No questions? I mean, I've done a great job and you guys have no questions at all. Awesome. Great, well, thank you. I got 5 minutes back. You guys can go now, have your drinks. I think I'm holding you up for the end of the day, but thank you for coming.